Let's get at it. RawMikeRichards.com. Broadcasting live from the DKI studios, 234 King Street East, out of the fantastic Pacific Junction Hotel. Coming up today, it's a full show. It's been a while, but we're back in a big way. Speaking of big, Chris Walby. He was never small. You're going to join us. We'll wrap up what's currently happening in the wacky world of the CFL. Then from Bleacher Report, we're going to talk to a guy we haven't spoken with in a while, but he's really good. Brad Gagnon is going to join us. By the way, did the Chargers know who the 49ers quarterback was going to be? Because
Nope.
I really think they...
Yeah, thanks for covering the 10.5 points. Their high-powered offense and decent defense that led everybody through.
Everybody. I thought that touchdown that Russell got in the second quarter was surprising.
I was surprised to see him on the field.
Very surprising.
Yeah.
Speaking of surprising, I'm pretty sure when you went to get us, whether on the dedicated YouTube channel or exclusively on Sportsnet The Fan 960, probably didn't think today you were going to hear a Bill Cosby interview. I'll just tell you, this isn't an impression. This isn't one of our bits. It's not the fake Bill Cosby. This is an interview I did with Bill Cosby, and when you listen to it now and listen to what he says, it's hard not to scrutinize even his answers, knowing what we know now. Because I'll tell you, a bigger fall from grace, tough to find a bigger one than this. We'll also take a look at the NHL, where, of course, depending on who you're cheering for, if you're in the GTA, then you are already planning the parade route. I have never, ever seen a Leaf fan base, and I've seen some pretty good teams, but you have to remember from, 1960, 67?
67.
You've had
Stanley Cup win.
You've had a lot of, and by the way, one of my first coaches that I had in my hometown was on that team.
Oh, really? Who was that?
Bill Hazard. Oh, sorry, Bob Hazard. Bill was his son.
Bob, yeah.
Bob Hazard was on that team.
Really?
Yeah.
Hazard County.
Yeah. He was a great man. Oh my God, did we learn a lot from him. That's when, you look at sort of, we talked to a lot of athletes, Dave, on what was a big influence in your life. What was a big influence when you played hockey? What was a big influence, when you played football? Sometimes there are certain names that stand out. For me, Bob Hazard would have been one of them. And it had nothing to do with the fact that he was a former Toronto Maple Leaf, actually has a Stanley Cup ring as a Maple Leaf Stanley Cup winner, which is not many of those guys.
No, that's a rarity right there.
But he, in those early stages of me and playing, understand what accountability was all about. He'd be mine. Do you have one? Do you have a coach?
Very cool.
Do you have a coach when you were young?
You know what? I have to put my dad on the forefront for sure. He was, not only a life coach, but everything coach kind of thing. So I'd put him up there. But then you look at some other guys. There was a friend of mine, Doug Davis's dad, was our coach. Doug Davis was a pretty decent player in Manitoba. His dad was our coach. We also had a number of the same guys that were there every single year, and it's just development, dedication. What you do on the ice is what you do off the ice. You learn a lot from sport, and I think it doesn't matter if it's hockey, baseball, volleyball, whatever the hell you like to play. That ability to show up on time, do what you can, do as well as you can, and add that to day-to-day life is something that everybody should probably take out of it for the foremost.
Yeah, and that's what you do. I mean, I think sometimes what gets lost in when you talk about kids playing team sports is the winning.
Yeah,
you've got to win.
Yeah,
and I think when you start talking about those gentlemen, I'd certainly put my father, who's been in that category for a lot of athletes who have come from that town, as my dad is a coach. Keith Acton would say the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's about, sure, it's more fun when you win, but there's a way to do it, and then there's also a way to live your life. For my dad, it was about that kind of accountability off the court, and also being an educated person. That was a huge part of truly who he was. So sort of interesting to talk about that. We'll talk to Chris Walby about that, because I know there's going to be a couple of guys on the list that we'll talk, or know who he's talking about. Brad Gagnon will talk NFL. But getting back to the CFL, Boy, I look at that Argonaut team. It's still stunning to think that they're defending champions. Like it really is.
Shouldn't have happened.
I mean, you think of that game that the Stamps had against them this past weekend. Yeah, it was kind of close for the first half because the Stamps would kick field goals, but you knew that that was going to probably come to an end pretty quickly, and it did. And once it started to roll, this game was not close. Once again, property of TSN and Bell Media Inc. Thanks, fellas. Here's how it sounded.
At BC, Argo's backed up, play action fake, and is that intercepted? And it looks like it is. It's Brandon Smith with his 3rd interception of the season.
McLeod Bethel Thompson wants this one back.
Arbuckle got that and touchdown.
I love that name, by the way. Arbuckle.
Arbuckle.
And a stamp punt.
And no, I'm not thinking fatty.
Another bad shotgun snap. Going out of the backfield, and that's William Longley. Will be in Edmonton. Rush on. Mitchell steps up. Through a cross body to Michelle. Morgan Michelle, touchdown! His 2nd of the game. And Bo Levi Mitchell now has touchdown passes in 14 consecutive games.
What an absolute beast they are when they want to get going. I still don't see anyone in their universe. Michelle had another awesome game. He is just a lethal weapon. And really, that's what we're talking about when you talk about the Stampeders. They find players, Dave. Their personnel and their ability to bring in players that seem to be exceptional. I'll be honest, back in the 80s, that's what made, the 70s and the 80s, what made the Edmonton Eskimos so good. They always had great players and great Canadians. Let's not forget about that. But I look at this Calgary Stampeder team, when they want to play their best, I just don't think there's anyone else better than them. I also think that Bo's doing a pretty good job in terms of his reads. And that's what, there's been criticisms over the years about, why do this, why do that, especially in the biggest moments of the biggest games. Right now, I don't see that criticism, and I think if there's relative health, these guys are going to fly.
Yeah, it should be. They clinched a playoff spot, first team to do that, 11-2 on the season. I think now it's a 2-horse race in the West Division. Saskatchewan's 4 points behind them, but after that, there's another drop-off of 4 points because the Eskimos are fizzling. The Bombers have finally decided to start winning after fizzling earlier last month. So you have a pair of 500 teams near the bottom. So the only worry for Calgary right now would be Saskatchewan. And guess what? Coming up in a couple of weeks is a head-to-head, Calgary and Saskatchewan. That's going to be a good one.
And we'll be betting on it. Remember, Sports Interaction, they're your friends. Sorry. Speaking of your friends, we talked about the passing of Mike Labinjo. A lot of people, pouring from all over North America about this young man passing way too early. But he just had such a spark in life, and I've never seen this before, courtesy of something called Stamps Connect. They did these little football shows where the players would actually take over and do this, these little gags. They decided that the Stamps would talk hockey, hosted by Mike Labinjo. This is a deleted scene that did not actually air, but this is fantastic, and just once again a reflection of how much fun Mike Labinjo was as the Stamps apparently going to attempt to talk about hockey, the Flames captain, and I'll let you decide the rest.
Who is the captain of the Calgary Flames?
Jerome McGinley.
No,
McGinley. You know what I'm talking about.
Starts with an I.
You know what I'm talking about.
All right, now wait. If you were to pick one person on this team that would look like Jerome McGinley, who would it be?
I would say Jawan Simpson. John Cornish. He's right. There you go, Coach. John Cornish.
John Cornish, you have it, folks. John Cornish is Jerome McGinley's lost brother.
Yeah.
You want to answer some questions here?
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Uh-oh.
I knew when I seen Ro answer the question, I knew that wasn't going to work out.
He's eating.
All right. The CFL has the Grey Cup. What does the NHL have?
The Ice Cup.
All right, get half of it. That's right. But what's the first one?
Stanley Cup.
There you go. This guy knows his hockey. How many teams are there in the NHL?
16.
No, a little more than that.
About 26.
No, the answer is 30, actually. There's 30 teams.
See, I play football.
That was awesome. Mike Labinjo, what a beauty. You're watching Raw Mike Richards either on the .com, on the dedicated YouTube channel. We see that going up continually as the numbers go up, and, of course, exclusively right here on Sportsnet The Fan 960. Sorry, I'm going to show a Johnny Manziel highlight. People are like, why do you? I'm not really necessarily saying, see, he could be in the NFL. I'm not talking about that. I don't care about that, Dave. I'm talking about Johnny Manziel, who's on a really bad team, who doesn't have a whole bunch of weapons, and he's finding way. I think he looks really good. If he was on a team that had something, I mean, seriously, if he was available for your team, depending on who you figure your quarterback is, all right, Bombers, would you take him?
No.
You wouldn't take him?
No, not over what they have. Not over what they have.
Okay.
You know what? I don't mind Johnny Manziel as a player, but I look at this and say, okay, well, you have your teams in the CFL. Is he top half or bottom half of quarterback starters? He's on the bottom half. He's not as good as Bo Levi Mitchell. He could probably get the job in BC because they're fighting for it, and Travis Lulay's always injured. He's getting old and so forth.
But you wouldn't take him over Nichols?
No, I wouldn't. Not when Matt Nichols is playing the way Matt Nichols is supposed to. I would take him in Toronto. I would take him in Montreal, obviously. I'd take him in BC. And after that, we're fist fighting for where he takes over.
But you know what? If he was playing like that, Hamilton, I have no problem him staying at Hamilton.
But would you replace Jeremiah Masoli?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a second best rated passer in the league.
Yeah, I still think
Mike Riley.
I still think I would do it.
Wow.
I still think I would do it.
Well, your opinion of him is better than mine. I think he has some growing to do. And by the way, just to repeat, we're not talking NFL.
No, this is not that conversation.
He's not going back to the NFL. In the near future.
But you're right. This is not an NFL. I'm saying, would you have him as a starter in the CFL? Well, when you're Montreal, you got to do a bunch of things to score. Flea flicker, that might be a part of it.
Shirt just went from an XL to a triple XL. Well, they got a little reverse here. And some razzle-dazzle. Manziel throwing. This is going to work out. It's a touchdown. And what a way to record your first CFL touchdown pass, Johnny Manziel.
Looked pretty good on that one. I said there's a bunch of plays that he looked good on, I felt, but it's the team that he's on. But if I'm looking at the CFL and sort of grading, you also have to, there's a little caveat to this too.
Yeah.
He has not played since the start of the season and started every single game.
Exactly.
So what would that look like? That's what my curiosity is on a team that has more than just a couple of weapons.
I think it's onward and upward for Johnny Manziel. I think he needs some protection. I think he needs a running back. I think he needs a couple receivers, and then we'll get a true testament of how good he is. Sidebar for a second.
Yes,
those Alouette uniforms, the gray ones that we just saw, are those the worst uniforms in sport?
I don't know what they're doing.
Or the world.
But you know what? I think football, you'd have to give me an example.
That's garbage uniforms.
Give me an example, and I don't care what league, but let's just stick with professional.
Okay.
Because there's too many college teams, and it gets too weird.
And every college team has 17 jerseys.
Yes, enough of that. And Nike, thank you for ruining my eyeballs with the University of Oregon. Thank you. Who has changed from their classic into one of the new? Give me an example of a new uniform that you like that is better than the original. Better than the original. I can't think of one.
I was going to say we might be here for the next 2 hours because I like the retro throwback. I like the throwbacks where it's like, okay, you tried something and then you went back to what you used in the 70s, 80s, 60s, whatever it was. I don't know of a new jersey.
Yeah. See, Penn State and Alabama, don't overthink it. No. We have two colors. That's what they are. We put the number on the side of your helmet. That's who you are. That is old school.
How true is that, eh?
That is old school. We're going to talk to Chris Walby in just moments. As I said, NHL coming up Wednesday, so we got some time here to talk about what we think is going to happen. I still, when they're lobbing out who's going to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, the number one thing to me when you say that. So there's the potential of winning the Cup is the way I would put it, because injuries can just torch your whole season. Whether it's your all-world goalie, maybe it's the stud defenseman, your number one, maybe your big scorer goes down. And look, as much as certain teams have depth, you lose your backstop. So if Hellebuyck gets hurt,
they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. Yeah, they're dead because they don't have a backup. They have a nice kid in the minors, Eric Comrie, brother of Mike and Paul, and the son of the brick owner.
Yeah, sure.
I think his name is Larry.
Is it Mike?
I don't know. I
think it's Mike.
I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
I know Mike's the son.
I thought he was. Oh, we don't know.
Yeah.
They're rich anyway.
Yeah,
they don't care.
Yeah, Bill
Sorry,
Carver.
Bill.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, close. Larry, Bill. Same thing. They have him developing the minors, but I don't see the Jets. I don't see. But the Jets are in that situation with a lot of other teams. You have your number one. If the Maple Leafs lose their number one goalie, they're finished as well. The Calgary Flames, for example, Mike Smith goes down. They have a couple promising rookies, and I wouldn't say rookies, younger type players, but I wouldn't want to throw them in a situation where they're playing 20 games a month, 15 games a month in that Pacific Division. Are you kidding me?
Well, I think Mike Smith has seen enough of Connor McDavid and the Oilers. I don't think they're friends. That was, again, a preseason game. You get what you get. The one thing I would say is you still see a lot of mistakes on the back end, Dave, for these teams. Like, depending on who's on the ice, you still see some backdoor stuff that probably in the regular season wouldn't happen. But for what it's worth, I think, for the Calgary Flames, I thought the power play time looked pretty good. This, once again, property of the National Hockey League. Flames, Oilers.
Gaudreau, Giordano, Lindholm loads, fires, save, rebound, Gaudreau scores.
Obviously, this is the Edmonton broadcast.
Power play goal, 11-13 with the assist to Giordano and Lindholm.
That was an impressive looking power play for Calgary. They won the drop. The Oilers never got a zone exit. And they missed one open net on a one-timer. And then a shot that ricocheted off the right pad of Cam Talbot. Gaudreau had a wide open net. We have ourselves a tie game.
Reeder overrun by Valimaki, and now in transition, Jankowski drops it off. One-timer, score! Right through Cam Talbot. Sam Bennett has made it 2-1 Flames.
Sam Bennett, if they get production from him, Dave, I think that would be good news for Flames fans, certainly. And then once again, we get started this week. That means, once again, your friends at Sports Interaction want to help you.
Yeah, they
help me help you.
By the way, at Sports Interaction, the Flames on futures. They are over-under totals of 94.5 points. Just to give you some retrospect of what the division looks like, the Oilers' over-under number is at 91.5 points. I think the Flames are going over that total.
The Oilers better have a better season this year. How can you not? Just by putting your uniform on, you're having a better season. It was terrible last year. Looking for Chris Walby.
Hello.
I'm looking for big Chris Walby. I guess no one ever said little Chris Walby. I don't think that even happened ever in your life. Did it?
Not there's chicken wings around, man. You know that, baby.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us here on the show today. Always one of my favorites. Always love catching up with you. And, of course, we're getting to the time right now in the CFL where it gets a little bit colder, things get a little bit tighter. And right now I'm taking a look at the league. And right now it's hard to think after Calgary, if I'm putting Calgary number one, which I am, who is number two in your mind, Chris? Is there someone even in the same universe as a Calgary Stampeder?
You know what? It's funny when you look at that, and I watch the games all weekend, or some of the highlights, and I see Hamilton. And Hamilton's a team I actually like Hamilton. So I liked them last year. I like them this year. I think that Mazzoli's coming into his own. I like their defense. I mean, they got 6 sacks, 3 interceptions. I mean, they just play well. My mind, yet BC is not having the farewell for Wally Buono they thought they would. Jonathan Jennings, wow. But I like to answer your question. I'm kind of liking Hamilton right now, and I know Ottawa's good right now with 8 wins, but they're kind of streaky, and it's going to be really interesting to see if the Bombers can duplicate their defensive efforts that they put forth against a pretty good offense of Edmonton. They shut Mike Riley and those guys down. So, yeah, I'd have to say right now Hamilton and Ottawa are probably number 2, and that's weird because it's coming from the East.
Yeah, exactly. We don't hear those kind of conversations too often, especially at this time of year. You know what? You kind of triggered something in my head about that BC Hamilton game. Have you seen, as a player and now as an analyst, have you seen anything stupider than a visiting team, dancing on the home team's logo, videotaping it, and then throwing it out on social media? I mean, is there anything dumber than that, Chris?
I guess I'm kind of like an old school guy. To me, I didn't really, I understood that I guess there's some fisticuffs after the game and there's a whole bunch of stuff about that, probably a result of that and probably the beatdown they took. But yeah, to me, it all started way back when Terrell Owens danced on the Dallas Cowboy star and they hit him. I don't get it. To me, I'm like, if I got to play a football game and I got to go against the guy that I'm worried about, I don't care if you want to have camp out on my logo. I don't take it that personal. It's a logo. It's not like you're doing, you're not defecating on my, my front yard or on something that's very personal to me. That's a team logo, it's a community logo. I personally don't. It doesn't bother me.
But Chris, you have done bad things. Let's not kid ourselves. There have been things that weren't maybe you're proud of.
Well, you know what? Thank God we didn't have media back there. I'm going to tell you. I might have had I probably would have had a 2-year career. I'm telling you right now.
Well, it's interesting. We had a little conversation. I was playing some of the highlights from Johnny Manziel, who's, I think his recognition of what goes on in the game is pretty good. I think he's making some pretty good decisions. He hasn't started, obviously all the games since game number 1. This is his second team. I think he's on a team that doesn't have a ton of weapons. And my curiosity was, and I asked Dave, if you're sitting there across the CFL, this is not, by the way, this is not an NFL. I don't care about, whether I think he'd be in the NFL or not. It's about the CFL. Would you have him as your starter in the CFL? And are there teams out there, do you think, if they were available, do you think Johnny Manziel is a starter in this league?
I think Johnny Manziel is getting better. I think when I watched him, I think that the fact is he's been out of football for so long. So you got to, there's definitely rust, there's recognition, his ability. But I watched, again, some of those highlights, and, he has such an innate ability to escape the pressure and make plays where there probably are no plays. But you hit it on the head, guys. His supporting cast is just awful. That offensive line is not very good. I don't think they have a receiver that really puts any fear of God in me right now. If he has some weapons and somebody, I think that I don't know what's going to happen with that whole organization right now, whether Mike Sherman will be back next year. I can't. But can they afford to, keep doing this rebuild? I don't know. But to answer your question as I go into my little whole story here, I like Johnny Manziel. I think he's good for the league. And I'm actually one of these guys that wants him to succeed. I think it's great for the league because I think there's a lot of pressure right now. We were talking about it in our pregame show a couple of nights ago in the Edmonton game. Just talking about, of course, the Alliance of American Football coming in. And all these, the opportunity to play down the South with, the American dollar. It's going to be really interesting what happens. So if I know there's rumors they're saying they want to sign Manziel to a long-term contract. Listen, you can't give the guy crazy money because you're worried about him going to another league. He hasn't proved himself yet. Do I think he's getting better? Yes. Is he worth $400,000 to $500,000? Not a chance in the world. Well, you can take all my empties. They probably add up to a couple hundred. You can have those. But no, we're not going to pay him that kind of money. But it's interesting. I like Manziel. I kind of like the way he is. I like his attitude. He's trying to make himself a better football player, and hopefully it works out for the young man.
Yeah, that's awfully nice of you with the empties, Chris. That's I mean, I didn't think I was. Hey, we're in conversation with the 9-time CFL All-Star, 3-time Grey Cup champion Chris Walby on the program. Okay, so you look at the West Division right now. You have the Bombers, Eskimos, and Lions separated by 2 points. The Eskimos may have some injury concerns to the quarterback and receiver position. You don't know what type of Lions team is going to show up from week to week, and the Bombers are finally rolling after sliding for about 4 consecutive weeks. Who takes the number 3 spot and who crosses over, because somebody will cross over?
Yeah, that's a great point. What I'm looking at, you watch BC and they escape with the hair of the team just over that, and that's another scenario with them, kind of drove me crazy with the Hiralahu thing, not kicking a field goal. I don't know what June Jones was thinking back then, but
agreed.
They should have picked BC back to back. BC is not a very good team right now. They've obviously lost Allen, and they lost some key guys. I think Travis Lulay, and this guy keeps coming back from unfortunate injuries, but I think when Lulay's in that offense, this team is not a bad football team. Jonathan Jennings, he had such a star. They thought this guy was going to be the next coming of, the great quarterbacks, now they're Ricky Ray, and he is just struggling. I mean, he has not played well. So I'm going to cut them right out. I mean, that's an easy one. But for me in the West, Zach Collaros is one of those guys. He's intangible. I'm not sure about him yet. If he can regain the form he had back in Hamilton, boy, I tell you what, it might be all right. He looked pretty good. They got some offensive weapons in Saskatchewan. That Lambert, the receiver, and I'm a big Ben. That kid's great. Trey Mason. They got some great players, but Zach Collaros is the key. And I know it goes right back to the quarterback. You have to have a quarterback to win this league. But if he gets better, boy, I tell you, it's going to be tough. I mean, obviously they swept the series with us. It's funny how one game changes everything. Right? Last week we beat Montreal. We're in 5th place just because of the standings. And they're talking about, hey, maybe we can fight for the crossover. But we beat Edmonton, who've now lost 2 in a row. Now we're an opportunity to even maybe catch a sketch, and I don't think we will. So to answer your question again in my little monologue, Saskatchewan.
Well, Chris, it's funny. We talk about the quarterback, and you need a quarterback to win, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to have a good coach. And I think, when I look at Dave Dickenson, and look, not every player is just going to immediately go, hey, do you want to coach? Not every player is made to coach, but I'll tell you what, for Dave Dickenson, that was pretty much as a natural, sort of segue into his latter years. I mean, I think he's doing a great job with the Stampeders, but, even watching him play, it was like kind of having another coach on the field.
You know what? Nothing but kudos for Dave Dickenson. And actually, Johnny Huffnagel, the guy above him. I mean, those guys are great. I think the fact is when you look at all the injuries that Calgary has had, the years back, last year I think with the old line was the major concern. This year they've lost so many receivers, Kamar Jordan and Devarius Daniels, and I think they lost Beggleton. They just lose another receiver with a broken arm, I think, this week.
Yeah.
And they plug and play. They find these guys, they put in, and they don't miss a beat. Now, again, Bo Levi is the recipient of great coaching, and I do believe that too, because Dave Dickenson had a heck of a career as a quarterback in CFL as well. So for him to be there, and then you got a Johnny Huffnagel above him, 2 great quarterbacks who used to play in this game. And, you got a guy with the athletic ability and the talent of Bo Levi. They're tough to beat, man. They've got a good defense, and they got a good offense. They just got a good team. But I think, the chip on the old shoulder is, you go to the dance twice and you come back with nothing. Boy, I tell you, but you know what? Most teams might have crashed, and I actually in the beginning of the year didn't pick Calgary. I thought Calgary was going to kind of go in those softs, kind of float down this year. I didn't think they're going to be as good as they are, and they're surprising me and good on them. But again, it's not. They could go again. They could go 16-2 and then end up in a dance, and not do it again. And then that would just be totally crushing for that team. But Dave Dickenson is an amazing coach, and good on him, man.
Yeah, it definitely is. You brought up the name John Huffnagel, and it kind of leads me to my next question. I've been going back and forth on email with a friend of yours, Dieter Brock, who's going to be releasing he's going to be releasing a book in a couple of weeks, and he's going to be on our program. Just wondering what you can tell us about what Dieter Brock was like a quarterback. I'm familiar with it because I grew up watching you guys. That's why you were not only the hometown team, but the hometown hero. But having a guy like Brock behind you, what sort of person was Dieter Brock on and off the field that you can tell us and share some stories with?
Dieter's an interesting cat because when I play with him, obviously I was just starting off my career, and that was 1981, and he'd been in the league a couple of years already. And just a guy that really not an outgoing, I don't mean he just wasn't a raw kind of guy. One of the strongest arms. I mean, I remember he threw a ball, and I've never seen this to this day. And Vernon Paul was playing fullback. He was a linebacker for us, and he threw the ball so hard he got stuck in his face mask. I've never seen that. And I'm not kidding you. The ball stuck in his face mask. Never seen that before. Since then or whatever. And he just had this incredible arm, incredible leadership. And listen, anybody that can come in this league, play here, go down to the LA Rams, take them to the Super Bowl. Now they got the book, and evidently what I'm reading is they're going to do a movie on him now. So, I'm going to make fun of him because I just did an autograph session with him at Princess Auto a couple weeks ago, him at Mill Spiegel, and it was great to catch up with him. And I just told him, if they're going to make a film about him, it's going to be a short film. I like Dieter, but you got to tell you, there's 2 guys in that I've ever played with. One is John Bach, who I think is out in Ontario.
Yep, number
and the 43.
Other one is Dieter
Brock. And these guys got blonder hair now than when they played. So somebody, I don't know what they're using, but boy, I tell you what, the stock of that stuff must be going through the roof because I look at Dieter actually. My God, you got the hair like the seasons, man. It changes every. You got nice blonde, then it gets a little brown in the fall. Oh my God!
Hey, what about your buddy Matt Dunnigan? So Matty's going with that silver look, and I said, not like Gary Busey, because no one probably wants to be compared to that. But what I'm saying is that silver look. Do you like it on Matty? Do you think it looks good on him?
Matty's a good-looking guy, man. I know that. Listen, that whole panel, man. I tell you what, it's all. What are the big guys? Ever since Schultz has got, they're all like all you do is compete who dresses better, who's got better hair. Oh my God! You got Burris out there with his nails all manicured. You got Dunnigan with his hair just coiffed perfectly with his little. Then you got Steve with the bow ties. Come on, fellas, get some big guys on the panel. That'd be crazy.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure, my friend. Hopefully we can catch up and before we get to the Grey Cup, because it's going to be a good one as always. It's always Canada's national party. As I said, it gets a little colder this time of year, but this is always where the moments are made, especially in the CFL. So we thank you, my friend, for joining us here this morning. We want to talk to you again soon.
Hey, anytime, guys. Listen, you made my morning, and I tell you what, I usually get the coffee to perk me up, but you guys perk me up.
There you go. There you go. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, boys. Take care.
Chris Walby joining us here on the show. And like I said, if I'm going to get something set up, then I can't think of a better guy to do that for us. And thanks so much for joining us here today. It's interesting. Hamilton, number 2 out of the East. Again, we just talked about people predicting who's going to win a championship. And sometimes you hear the adage that, you can't blame failure on injuries, because you always have to play with them. But I'm like, yeah, but it depends on who gets injured. And for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, once Brandon Banks came back, as soon as I saw that, I was all over the Ticat number. And it was what, 7 even, I think, at kickoff. And I'm like, no problem. They are just a completely different team when Speedy Banks is out there. And of course, he was in the middle of all that controversy with the dancing on the logo. I just don't know why you would do that. You kind of look like a punk when you do that.
You do, yeah. And that's why that's why I asked Chris the question. I wasn't sure how he'd react to it, because obviously in his day, he wouldn't be one to dance on a logo ever.
Most guys wouldn't. But it's a code, right? It's the code thing.
Exactly. But you'd almost have to think that if he was although it didn't bother him, if he was part of that team, he probably would have pulled the guys back and said, we don't do that here right now.
See, I would. If I'm on the team, people think, I'm the crazy guy, whatever. But when I played sports, I was kind of a square. I was very old school, and I'm like, so what do you think that does? You want to get as he said, you want to get them angrier? Mm-hmm. Look, this is a team we're going to have a tough time beating these guys on the road here in this building. So now you decide what? You're going to dance on the logo? Good thinking. How'd that work out, by the way? I'm just curious. How did it work out? Not good, right? We're going to talk to Bruce Gagnon from Bleacher Report.
Brad
Gagnon. I haven't talked to him in a while. Does a really good job over some of the crazy stuff over the weekend. I'm certainly going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Looking good.
Because people are sitting there going, yeah, I'll wait on this one. Andy Dalton? Yeah, I'll wait on him too. There's just this whole Missouri, the show me state kind of attitude when it comes to the Bengals. I trust me, I get it. And especially with Andy Dalton, I get that too.
I had the Bengals plus the number too.
Yeah, I like that pick. I do like that pick. Before we get to Brad, just want to place. There's a lot of things that go on in baseball parks that I have seen. There's a lot of tradition, where some buildings you always throw the ball back. Like if it's the other team hitting the home run, you throw the ball back. I've never quite seen this.
This is awesome.
This is property of Major League Baseball Advanced Media.
This is funny.
This obviously is in Fenway. Giancarlo Stanton hits a home run. Yeah, maybe the ball's going to be thrown back, but not like this.
That's amazing. This one is driven deep and far to left field. It comes down. The Yankees are going to add another run. Giancarlo Stanton has homered, and New York takes an 8-2 lead. Stanton getting his 38th home run of the year.
Oops.
He got hit by the ball. Well, there he is.
That's him.
Look at the throw. Look at the throw.
I don't think I've seen that before, where it hits the guy who hits the home run.
Pretty good aim.
He didn't see it coming at all.
Yeah, but he's flat-footed, that guy. Yeah, that's unbelievable. Have you ever in your life even seen that attempted?
Nope. Usually some of the people that throw the balls back will save the ball and throw it the following inning at one of the outfielders because it's a little bit closer.
He threw it to second base from straight. Now, granted, it's Fenway, so it's not
it's not the you're right.
Longest run. And yet he's flat-footed, probably hammered. I'm guessing that. And he throws a flat-footed and throws it and actually comes within millimeters of hitting the guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's maybe it's not as good as the beer can throw in Winnipeg at the Rocket for the Grey Cup.
He just missed the Rocket on about the 6-yard line.
What if he'd hit him? You know how bad that would have looked.
Oh, that would look terrible. Imagine he hits him or he
falls on it
and he falls at like the 4-yard line.
There's a lot of people. See what we do? This is what we think about. But before we get to Brad Gagnon from Bleacher Report, as everyone knew it was coming, it was announced that John Gibbons not going to be the manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. So there's Ross Atkins. What do you think people in this city, that being Toronto, what do they think of this guy?
Heard.
Yeah, this is not helping him either. John Gibbons, though, got to be honest, one of the good guys. And he's actually, I think, very graceful here, a lot of dignity. But look, a lot of people have a lot of time for John Gibbons, the man. This is property of Major League Baseball, Advanced Media, and the Toronto Blue Jays.
Ultimately, what we've decided is that John will not be returning as our manager. So you don't come to those decisions easily. It's been very difficult, but ultimately because of who he is as a man and our respect for him, we are here today. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
We kept that secret pretty good, didn't we? So anyway, thanks, Ross. Yeah, it's we have been talking obviously the last couple months. What happens in the baseball world. Things start changing, expectations, for your team, and if things don't go well. But, when Ross first came in, I'll be honest with you, I thought I was probably gone then. And I can't thank him enough for keeping me around. He, that doesn't always happen. It's quite unusual. So, I've got nothing but, great things to say about that. So, he put a lot of money in my pocket. That's not bad either. So, but anyway, yes, we're here. I mean, Ross and I are on good terms. Just one of those things that happen in baseball. It's not surprising. It's pretty common, and we've come to the conclusion, for best for both sides, that we go a different direction. So that's where we're at today.
So
there it is. Once again, the kind of farewell. Got the big hand. I mean, people love him this time. So that's John Gibbons talking his farewell to the Blue Jays.
Hello.
I'm looking for, and listen to how I say your name, Brad Gagnon. You like
this
that?
Is Brad. How's it going?
Isn't that great? Hey, it's going pretty good, and thanks so much for joining us from the Bleacher Report. And I just, I started to talk about it earlier on, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. So as soon as I say Cincinnati Bengals, you get a lot of eye rolling. You get a couple of little, including talking about Andy Dalton. That was a big game they played in the weekend. They've been very consistent this year in the NFL. I mean, you kind of check a lot of boxes with them on how they actually play, including on defense. Can we believe in them? Because a lot of people get burned by them.
Yeah, I'm still leery of them. I mean, the 3-1 start is nice. You wonder if in a new offense, in a new system, Andy Dalton has started to finally sort of get it together after several down seasons in a row. He's got one of the best receivers in the game, and A.J. Green, obviously. We'll see if John Ross can gain some consistency as a second-year top 10 pick at that wide receiver position. Look, they've been doing it the last couple of weeks anyway without Joe Mixon, who was supposed to be their stud back this season, averaged 4.7 yards per carry, has been injured. And will be out probably a few more weeks, but the fact is that they went toe-to-toe with the Falcons, and they came out on top. They made some big plays in the clutch. And aside from a bit of a blip in Carolina, which is never an easy place to win, they've been perfect this season. So we'll see if they can keep it up. The schedule, Miami's a team they can definitely beat to get to 4-1, and then they'll have a very fascinating game if they can win that Dolphins game at home against Pittsburgh in 2 weeks, which could decide kind of who sticks around with the Ravens in that division at this point.
Yeah, let's stay in that division, and let's talk about that Ravens-Steelers game, and more in particular the Steelers. Are we? I know it's only 4 games into the season, But are we slowly starting to see the early stages of that Pittsburgh, I'm not going to say dynasty, but some really nice years? Are we starting to see it crumble where Big Ben is on the verge of retirement? Their stud running back is not going to be back, or it appears not to be back, and their wide receiver, I have a feeling that he might be another piece that's going to go soon. Are we starting to see the early stages of the crumbling of the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise as we know them in the last decade?
Yeah, it's feeling that way. You know, you look at guys like T.J. Watt and Juju Smith-Schuster, and you wonder if they can avoid, that rebuild. But ultimately, a quarterback is what you need, and if you don't have one, you're not going to be there, and if you do have one, you're usually going to be a contender still. So I think it comes down to Roethlisberger and how long he can play, and he's of course been there's been speculation regarding his retirement for several years in a row now. If indeed he is starting to lose it, that's the difference. I don't think having Le'Veon Bell or not is a Super Bowl versus a 5-win season for the Steelers as much as his absence has hurt. I don't think that Antonio Brown even alone can be that big of a difference maker, although his struggles this season, at least compared to previous seasons, have been concerning and probably somewhat of a byproduct of the struggles from Roethlisberger and, of course, the lack of balance established by Connor versus Bell in the backfield. But, yeah, I mean, you got to look at Roethlisberger and just wonder, the last few years haven't been statistically as strong as they were. He hasn't had a triple-digit passer rating since 2014. Kind of come back to earth a little bit in terms of his interceptions the last few years, where he's thrown 43 in the last 3 seasons and has 5 in first 5 games this year. Just doesn't look as crisp, and he's on pace to put up his worst season in nearly a decade statistically right now. So, he's definitely a guy who I think is running out of gas. And we've said that before and been fooled before about lots of other great players, future Hall of Famers like Roethlisberger is. But considering the momentum that the Bengals, Ravens, and even Browns have in that AFC North, it's definitely time to at least probably be concerned about the Steelers' future.
We're in conversation with Brad Gagnon from Bleach Report here on Raw Mike Richards. You're either watching on the .com, the dedicated YouTube channel, or listening exclusively right here on Sportsnet, the Fan 960. I look at the Bears and the Buccaneers. It looks like it's a tale of two teams going completely different directions. The Bucs got a crazy start to the season, and they had people a little confused there for a little bit, but it's starting to sort of play out, and I'm looking at a Bears team now 3-1. Trubisky looked really good. They pound the Buccaneers. Just how good are the Bears?
I think they're good enough to make the playoffs this season, and that's something that even now a lot of folks doubt, but especially at the beginning of the season, it was like, well, this is a team that just won a handful of games under John Fox last couple of years, and is Mitchell Trubisky really ready after 13 college starts and one babied rookie season to take the next step? And that was a fair question. Still is a fair question, because the Bucs defense is terrible. But it's definitely, we're at a point now where we can start to wonder if maybe Trubisky's taking that next step with Matt Nagy as his offensive coordinator. They looked fantastic in scripted situations the first few weeks of the season, where that first drive or two of the game, which Nagy has pre-planned with his offensive staff and with Trubisky, they're going down the field, they're getting in the end zone. And then all of a sudden the wheels were sort of coming off when Trubisky was freelancing and having to make big plays sort of under his own power. But that all changed against the Bucs. And, yeah, bad defense, but 48 points and a guy throwing 6 touchdown passes, it doesn't matter what defense you're playing against. The fact is that the passer rating that he posted, I believe, was 154.6 in yesterday's game, is a rating that Aaron Rodgers has only reached in one game of his entire career. I mean, it's pretty remarkable performance regardless of who he faced, and it's an indication that this offense can probably put up 24, 27, 30 points against more competitive defenses, which when Khalil Mack is playing the way he is, and he's supported the way he is by the many pieces they have on the defensive side of the ball there, that's all you need to win a lot of ball games and to be potentially right there in the NFC North.
If you're looking at the power rankings through the first month of the season, we're basically in the this week when we start Thursday Night Football, we're basically in the second quarter of the football season. Is there a better team than the Los Angeles Rams?
No, I mean, the Chiefs are right there. I don't think anyone else is right there except for Kansas City. I think, a big performance against the Broncos for KC will kind of keep them in that conversation. They don't have the defense, right? I mean, they're not an all-around as good a team as the Rams are, who can do it on both sides of the ball, who obviously have that incredible duo up front in Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald. And so that's the difference right now. If the Chiefs, the Earl Thomas rumors are now gone because unfortunately he looks like he's down for the year. But if they can bring in some help in the secondary, if Eric Berry can get healthy, just anything that can kind of make them, a little more respectable on the defensive side of the ball, and Patrick Mahomes can keep doing what he's doing in that Andy Reid offense with all those weapons, they can be right there. And the thing that's going for the Chiefs that's not going for the Rams is they don't have as much competition. I mean, the AFC West, doesn't look particularly strong this season. The AFC is significantly weaker than the NFC. And so long as those dynamics exist, the Chiefs are going to have a chance to potentially end up winning more games than the Rams this year just because they have a little bit of a softer way. Beyond that, look at the Eagles. They could be 0-4 right now the way they've played. The Patriots, they're just 2-2. They have struggled generally. Not a lot of weapons and support for Tom Brady. The defense is bad. The Saints have been struggling defensively and have had to win a few games by, the skin of their teeth. The Jaguars lost to the Titans in a single-digit performance. It really is Rams, then Chiefs, and then
so you can recognize what brand you're looking at. Sorry, there's something busting onto the that was the Eagles actually driving down the toilet, I think is what it was. I did not see this at 2-2, but there's a couple of teams also that I'm just unsure about. And when I see a performance by Marcus Mariota, I saw what Tennessee does. I just still don't know how good the Titans are.
I agree. I think that the jury's still out on that team. I think that the key takeaway for the Titans this season so far is that Mike Vrabel's a good coach, and he's got those guys coming up big in big moments. He's making good decisions. You have to admire what he did by going for it on fourth down when he essentially had to decide between accepting what was almost certainly going to be a tie versus a loss or a win, and gambling, and it paying off. And that's, I think, the key takeaway here, is that at least they know their coach, the hire they made, the somewhat hire for a fairly inexperienced head coach in the offseason, looks as though it has paid off, and that's an upgrade so far over Mike Mularkey. And so, that alone is good. We still don't know if Marcus Mariota can A, stay healthy, and B, be consistently productive when he is healthy. Derrick Henry has not taken the reins they expected in the backfield when they essentially promoted him for DeMarco Murray in the offseason. Corey Davis, their top 5 pick at the wide receiver position, yet to fully take off as well. So a lot of unanswered questions still about the Titans on both sides of the ball, really. And then, that division will give them some margin for error. Again, the AFC's weaker and the AFC South looks even weaker. The Texans and Colts were both embarrassing yesterday. The Jaguars are strong, but for some reason the Titans have their number. They beat them in 5 straight games now. So, as long as that's the case, I think they're going to stick around this season. But again, we haven't gotten a good feel. Even the Eagles, you think that was finally this litmus test. It was sort of a weird game. The Eagles didn't look right. The Bills won't be much more of a test in week 5, regardless of what happens. But there's going to be times this year. I mean, they played the Ravens, they played the Patriots, they played the Jags again, of course, and that's when we're going to get a feel, I think, for exactly what this Tennessee team's ceiling looks like.
Hey, Brad, thanks so much for joining us here this morning. Always appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again real soon. We appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks a lot for having me.
That is Brad Gangel from Bleacher Report, making it through all the little magical, stupid little internet things, little commercials, and
things happen.
You never tell, right? You're sitting there going, okay, well, I've got this ready to go, and this is going to happen, and of course, we got to throw a commercial in front of it.
Da-da-da.
Do you suffer from psoriasis? No, what sorry, Brad. No, it's not about you. No, I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying. So, but I agree with him too. That Titans win, I'm looking, I'm going, big win. But I am still waiting for the real Eagles to show up. Look, I know they had to juggle around a lot with injuries. I still think they'll be there probably at the end of the season. So, again, let's not go crazy, 4 games. But as in terms of consistency, I kind of like what the Bears have done. I mean, they're definitely a playoff team. I don't know how good and how far they can go, but right now, I mean, are you just putting the Packers in there? Because I'll be honest, the Packers don't look like a machine.
No, they don't. Like, Mitch Trubisky looks like there's the reason why the Bears moved up in the draft and drafted him and surprised even their head coach at draft time a couple years ago. That looked awesome. Now, they weren't playing the Patriots teams of yesterday either, but man, that looks solid. And they got the running attack, the two-headed running attack. They have the right receivers. The defense is very good. And by the way, Khalil Mack, best defensive player in the world.
Oh, my God.
In the world?
Yeah. Because when I'm watching the Oakland game, I'm like, I wonder how many people are going, I wonder what Khalil's doing right now. I don't winning? Winning?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Before we get to our next subject, breaking news, Shea Weber has been announced as the Montreal Canadiens captain, even though the guy's out for the next couple of months because of an injury. And we have some cuts to the Toronto Maple Leafs, including we shouldn't say cut. They're put on waivers, so you have to think that, oh, okay, so they're on waivers, so he made the team, right? Well, yeah, you kind of connect the dots. Connor Carrick, Curtis McElhaney, and Calvin Pickard have been placed on waivers. Thus, it appears that Garrett Sparks is the backup goalie to Fred Anderson.
Does it surprise you? Because I know Pickard, you sort of thought might have had an outside shot.
That was my choice. Yeah. Does it surprise me that they went with the AHL goalie of the year? Not really.
Right,
but I thought even the backup I thought was better. But nonetheless, I still think there's a job out with him somewhere. I'd like to see him in Winnipeg, to tell you the honest truth.
Well, you just talked about what's behind Hellebuyck. So who? I mean, look, goalies, you never get as much as when you're in that market, when you cheer for that team, you're in that town. You have certain feelings about goaltenders. You never, in the NHL, get the value that you think it should be. It's lower than what you think. So if you ship someone off, they're not going to give you the house. They're just not. It doesn't work that way with goalies. Russell, you fine with this? I mean, I know at times you get very upset about these kinds of decisions. I know that this is your life, really, is what we're talking about.
Yeah, he likes to break stuff when things don't go wrong.
Yeah. So you okay with this?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
And thank you. That side. We'll return to Russell tomorrow.
You can subscribe to his newsletter, by the way. $9.95 a month. Graham Uncut.
Yeah. I don't know if you even want to say it that way. That kind of makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Unedited.
And speaking of feeling uncomfortable, well, we're at this time that I got to tell you, seeing everything that had happened and has happened to Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, for what it's worth, from about late 60s to into the 90s, was one of the most well-known, most loved, and most popular comedic actors, stand-ups. He was a legend to many guys who've taken the stage, to where we sit now with one of the biggest and largest falls from grace I can think of. So, upon seeing the sentencing, I thought, I'm going to go back several years to the interview that I had with Bill Cosby. And at this time, it's Sportsnet, the Fan 960, where I'm talking to him. But I have no idea what we're going to talk about because he's playing that night. He is playing that night in Calgary. This is one of the most different interviews that I have ever done, and especially at that time, a lot more serious than it usually was. The things that he says in this interview, now you take a look back at it and go, huh. There's a couple of things, and I'll only play a segment of the interview. I'll put it on Twitter later if you want to hear its interview in its entirety. But this is my interview with Bill Cosby pre-sentencing. Oh, yeah. And we have him, the legend. We finally got a hold of him. It was our fault. You don't want the cause mad at you. He could start throwing Emmys at us, and it wouldn't be finished for a day. Bill Cosby. Right now, how about a little Joe Williams?
Hold it right there. Baby, please don't go. Hold it right there. Baby, please don't go.
Only one guy sounds like that. Ever. What a way to bring in Bill Cosby. Love it. Good morning, Bill Cosby.
Now, let me tell you something. First of all, this is the first, and I mean it, sports talk I've ever really enjoyed the music. Usually, man, you get... And he said, oh, man, I'm starting to get the jitters. Let me tell you about Joe Williams.
Yes,
please. Your favorite. We were doing a benefit at the Pierre Hotel. This is maybe 25 years ago. Now, you got your Joe Williams there. Hold it right there. And it's for the NAACP, and the place is packed, and people of all colors and everything, in tuxedos. And now the Lord's Prayer will be sung by Joe Williams. And he did it without any accompaniment. And I said to myself, this guy has range. It was the most wonderful Lord's Prayer. Unexpected, but a cappella, and notes as clear as can be. And then, that day he died, I didn't know he had. I got off the plane in Teterboro. The car came out and got me, and the guy always puts it on 88.3, and I'm listening to Joe Williams, and he's singing "Here's to Life." And I didn't know it, but there was an eerie feeling in the car. I'm sitting up front with the driver. Now, the driver knows. And I'm saying to myself, man, this thing, it was the first time I'd heard him do it. I said, this just sounds strong. He said, yeah, he sang it like he knew he was going. I said, well, what do you mean he knew? He said he died. He was in the hospital, and he was trying to get home to his wife. Didn't make it. And man, oh man. So your choice, you and I, we're all right,
okay,
man.
well, that is very good, and I think, in terms of those that have it, whatever it that is, however you want to define it. I remember as a small kid hearing my dad put on and he had the jazz albums, and strangely enough, I mean, drumming was my thing. I mean, I played traditional grip jazz drums. That's how I started. And when you hear that, it is just a voice that transcends, just average everyday music. Did I play rock? Absolutely. Was it, all the stuff the kids did of the time? Absolutely. But there is something very special about the ability that these people have in their phrasing, in that emotion, in the spirit of lyric. It doesn't matter. These people, as you said, take the Lord's Prayer. I mean, there might be some slight pressure to do that properly. And when you have someone special like that, it might be a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Well, properly is what you have in you to give in the interpretation. It is something you don't want to lose. And so many people, you can just see it. It could be in a 2-year-old child. It's just special. Could be in a grown-up who's not world renowned or known anywhere. It's just when you meet them and they talk. I remember this beautiful black woman. It was my second time playing this casino in Mississippi, and I came in the back way to just shake hands with the people, and this woman was in a red suit dress and a red hat and this black skin, just with the red bouncing off the lights and hitting the skin, and she looked must have been 70 something like that, man, and her skin had the sun line on it, and just beautiful. And I stopped, and there were people around her, and obviously they were smiling, and they had something to do with bringing her there, obviously. And I took her hand, and I looked at her, and she said, "Bill Cosby, I've seen you on the TNV, and now I see you Nacho." and that was super, super special. Super, super special. So you're absolutely correct. If it's with someone who is in sports, playing any soccer, and I don't mean to be funny, I mean to be serious, curling.
Yes, yeah.
You know, if they have it, it's special.
Now, now let me ask you this, Bill. If that it happens to be, in this case, for the sake of this interview and how people are listening to this, that it is you. If that it person happens to be the one that you're looking at in the mirror, I would think at times, Bill, that that's not necessarily as easy as people would assume it to be. Because at a young age, as you were finding your way, as you go through the streets of Philadelphia and the Navy and your experience at Temple, which when I go back as a kid, again, my dad, who was a great collegiate coach and a very good teacher, as part of his health and education, he used parts of your early albums and Why Is There Air. He used that in terms of the relationships that you have with your wife and with your children. And you get to a certain point and people look at you and you realize, back in the 60s that you're it. How does someone react to that?
Well, before I get to it, I have to do what every human being has to do, and that is deal with self-esteem in the area we're going to pursue. And my life, I had no idea what my trouble, sadness, and frustration was until I got deeply into my 60s, because my father had brutally used his fists on my mother when I was very, very little. And thank goodness, talking to Alvin F. Poussaint, the psychiatrist, I was able to find out what really and truly had kept me from becoming a doctor, an engineer, a physics professor, a philosopher. I never realized that those days of it was just two beatings I had seen, but I was small enough that I couldn't help my mother. And my dislike for him was pressed, and my sadness in wanting a real father and admiration for boys who had a father. And then, of course, when my father left, my mother made me the head because I'm firstborn. So this thing of humor, I lean towards that for happiness.
Wow. Isn't that something? And I believe at that time, he had never told anybody publicly about his father in that story.
Wow. Yeah.
It is almost incomprehensible that someone of his stature, what he achieved, the love, the outpouring of love, he was always so well liked. He was loved. And I'm going way back to everything that he ever did. Early television, late 60s, to where we are now. And so if you want to hear that interview in its entirety, but I just thought for the sake of what we have just seen this past week and being back on the show, that is an interview I'll never forget in a time I think that if you had told me what was coming, I definitely wouldn't have believed you. There's just no way that I can even comprehend listening to that on what has now transpired.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup. It's time!
I would like to thank Big Bluto, Chris Walby, for joining us today talking about the CFL. He's got Calgary number 1, which should not be a surprise to anybody who follows the league. But Hamilton Tiger Cats at number 2. Interesting. Because guess what? They're going to have to make it out of the East to see if that's really true, and that's no guarantee.
Let's get ready to rock.
Also from Bleacher Report, Brad Gagnon talking a little NFL. My favorite story so far this year, Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes.
It's been awesome, hasn't it?
I will pay to see that. Thanks for joining us here today. Remember to subscribe to Raw Mike Richards and the dedicated YouTube channel. Thanks to Sportsnet The Fan 960.